Chapter 25. Jason. Jason dreamed he was wrapped in chains, hanging upside down like a hunk of meat. Everything hurt. His arms, his legs, his chest, his head. Especially his head. It felt like an overinflated water balloon. "If I'm dead," he murmured, "why does it hurt so much?" "You're not dead, my hero," said a woman's voice. "It is not your time. Come, speak with me." Jason's thoughts floated away from his body. He heard monsters yelling, his friends screaming, fiery explosions, but it all seemed to be happening on another plane of existence, getting further and further away. He found himself standing in an earthen cage, tendrils of tree roots and stone whirled together, confining him. Outside the bars he could see the floor of a dry reflecting pool, another earthen spire growing at the far end, and above them the ruined red stones of a burnt-out house. Next to him in the cage a woman sat cross-legged in black robes, her head covered by a shroud. She pushed aside her veil, revealing a face that was proud and beautiful, but also hardened with suffering. "Hera," Jason said. "Welcome to my prison," said the goddess. "You will not die today, Jason. Your friends will see you through, for now." "For now?" he asked. Hera gestured at the tendrils of her cage. "There are worse trials to come. The very earth stirs against us." "You're a goddess," Jason said. "Why can't you just escape?" Hera smiled sadly. Her form began to glow until her brilliance filled the cage with painful light. The air hummed with power, molecules splitting apart like a nuclear explosion. Jason suspected if he were actually there in the flesh, he would have been vaporized. The cage should have been blasted to rubble. The ground should have split and the ruined house should have been leveled. But when the glow died, the cage hadn't budged. Nothing outside the bars had changed. Only Hera looked different, a little more stooped and tired. "Some powers are even greater than the gods," she said. "I'm not easily contained. I can be in many places at once, but when the greater part of my essence is caught, it is like a foot in a bear trap, you might say. I can't escape, and I am concealed from the eyes of the other gods. Only you can find me, and I grow weaker by the day." "Then why did you come here?" Jason asked. "How were you caught?" The goddess sighed. "I could not stay idle. Your father, Jupiter, believes he can withdraw from the world, and thus lull our enemies back to sleep. He believes we Olympians have become too involved in the affairs of mortals, in the fates of our demigod children, especially since we agreed to claim them all after the war. He believes this is what has caused our enemies to stir. That is why he closed Olympus." "But you don't agree?" "No," she said. "Often I do not understand my husband's moods or his decisions. But even for Zeus, this seemed paranoid. I cannot fathom why he was so insistent and so convinced. It was unlike him. As Hera, I might have been content to follow my lord's wishes, but I am also Juno." Her image flickered, and Jason saw armour under her simple black robes, a goatskin cloak, the symbol of a Roman warrior, across her bronze mantle. "Juno, Moneta, they once called me. Juno, the one who warns. I was guardian of the state, patron of eternal Rome. I could not sit by while the descendants of my people were attacked. I sensed danger at this sacred spot. A voice," she hesitated. "A voice told me I should come here. Gods do not have what you might call a conscience, nor do we have dreams, but the voice was like that, soft and persistent, warning me to come here. And so, the same day Zeus closed Olympus, I slipped away without telling him my plans, so he could not stop me. And I came here to investigate." "It was a trap," Jason guessed. The goddess nodded. "Only too late did I realize how quickly the earth was stirring. I was even more foolish than Jupiter, a slave to my own impulses. This is exactly how it happened the first time. I was taken captive by the giants, and my imprisonment started a war. Now our enemies rise again. The gods can only defeat them with the help of the greatest living heroes, and the one whom the giants serve. She cannot be defeated at all, only kept asleep." "I don't understand." "You will soon," Hera said. The cage began to constrict, the tendrils spiralling tighter. Hera's form shivered like a candle flame in the breeze. Outside the cage, Jason could see shapes gathered at the edge of the pool, lumbering humanoids with hunched backs and bald heads. Unless Jason's eyes were tricking him, they had more than one set of arms. He heard wolves too, but not the wolves he'd seen with Lupa. He could tell from their howls this was a different pack, hungrier, more aggressive, out for blood. "Hurry, Jason," Hera said. "My keepers approach, and you begin to wake. I will not be strong enough to appear to you again, even in dreams." "Wait," he said. "Boreas told us you'd made a dangerous gamble. What did he mean?" Hera's eyes looked wild, and Jason wondered if she really had done something crazy. "An exchange," she said. "The only way to bring peace. The enemy counts on our divisions, and if we are divided, we will be destroyed. You are my peace offering, Jason, a bridge to overcome millennia of hatred." "What? I don't... I cannot tell you more, Hera said. You have only lived this long because I have taken your memory. Find this place. Return to your starting point. Your sister will help. Thalia. The scene began to dissolve. Goodbye, Jason. Beware, Chicago. Your most dangerous mortal enemy waits there. If you are to die, it will be by her hand. Who? He demanded. But Hera's image faded, and Jason awoke. His eyes snapped open. Cyclops. Whoa, sleepyhead. Piper sat behind him on the bronze dragon, holding his waist to keep him balanced. Leo sat in front, driving. They flew peacefully through the winter sky as if nothing had happened. Detroit, Jason stammered. Didn't we crash land? I thought... It's okay, Leo said. We got away, but you got a nasty concussion. How you feeling? Jason's head throbbed. He remembered the factory, then walking down the catwalk, then a creature looming over him, a face with one eye, a massive fist, and everything went black. How did you... the Cyclops. Leo ripped them apart, Piper said. He was amazing. He can summon fire. It was nothing, Leo said quickly. Piper laughed. Shut up, Valdez. I'm going to tell him. Get over it. And she did. How Leo single-handedly defeated the Cyclops family. How they freed Jason and then noticed the Cyclops starting to reform. How Leo had replaced the dragon's wiring and got them back in the air just as they'd started to hear the Cyclops roaring for vengeance inside the factory. Jason was impressed. Taking out 3 Cyclops was nothing but a toolkit. Not bad. It didn't exactly scare him to hear how close he'd come to death. But it did make him feel horrible. He'd stepped right into an ambush and spent the whole fight knocked out while his friends fended for themselves. What kind of quest leader was he? When Piper told him about the other kid the Cyclops claimed to have eaten, the one in the purple shirt who spoke Latin, Jason felt like his head was going to explode. A son of Mercury. Jason felt like he should know that kid, but the name was missing from his mind. I'm not alone then, he said. There are others like me. Jason, Piper said, you are never alone. You've got us. I know, but something Hera said. I was having a dream. He told them what he'd seen and what the goddess had said inside her cage. An exchange? Piper asked. What does that mean? Jason shook his head. But Hera's gamble is me. Just by sending me to Camp Half-Blood, I have a feeling she broke some kind of rule, something that could blow up in a big way. Or save us, Piper said hopefully. That bit about the sleeping enemy, that sounds like the lady Leo told us about. Leo cleared his throat. About that, she kind of appeared to me back in Detroit, in a pool of porta potty sludge. Jason wasn't sure he'd heard that right. Did you say porta potty? Leo told them about the big face in the factory yard. I don't know if she's completely unkillable, he said, but she cannot be defeated by toilet seats. I can vouch for that. She wanted me to betray you guys, and I was like, right, I'm going to listen to a face in the potty sludge? She's trying to divide us. Piper slipped her arms from around Jason's waist. He could sense her tension without even looking at her. What's wrong? He asked. Why are they toying with us? Who is this lady, and how is she connected to Enceladus? Enceladus? Jason didn't think he'd heard the name before. I mean, Piper's voice quavered. That's one of the giants. Just one of the names I could remember. Jason got the feeling that there was a lot more bothering her, but he decided not to press her. She'd had a rough morning. Leo scratched his head. Well, I don't know about Enceladus. Enceladus, Piper corrected. Whatever, but old Pottyface mentioned another name. Porpoise Fear or something. Porphyrion, Piper asked. He was the giant king, I think. Jason envisioned that dark spire in the old reflecting pool, growing larger as Hera got weaker. I'm going to take a wild guess, he said. In the old stories, Porphyrion kidnapped Hera. That was the first shot in the war before the giants and the gods. Well, between them. I think so, Piper agreed. But those myths are really garbled and conflicted. It's almost like nobody wanted that story to survive. I just remember there was a war and the giants were almost impossible to kill. Heroes and gods had to work together, Jason said. That's what Hera told me. Kind of hard to do, Leo grumbled, if the gods won't even talk to us. They flew west, and Jason became lost in his thoughts. All of them bad. He wasn't sure how much time passed before the dragon drove through a break in the clouds, and below them, glittering in the winter sun, was a city at the edge of a massive lake. A crescent of skyscrapers lined the shore. Behind them, stretching out to the western horizon, was a vast grid of snow-covered neighbourhoods and roads. Chicago, Jason said. He thought about what Hera had said in his dream. His worst mortal enemy would be waiting here. If he was going to die, it would be here by her hand. One problem down, Leo said. We got here alive. Now, how do we find the storm spirits? Jason saw a flash of movement below them. At first he thought it was a small plane, but it was too small, too dark and fast. The thing spiraled towards the skyscrapers, weaving and changing shape. And just for a moment, it became the smoky figure of a horse. "How about we follow that one?" Jason suggested, "and see where it goes." Chapter 26. Jason. Jason was afraid they'd lose their target. The Ventus moved like the wind. "Speed up," he urged. "Bro," Leo said. "If I get any closer, he'll spot us. Bronze Dragon ain't exactly a stealth plane." "Slow down," Piper yelped. The Storm Spirit dove into the grid of downtown streets. Festus tried to follow, but his wingspan was way too wide. His left wing clipped the edge of a building, slicing off a stone gargoyle before Leo pulled up. "Get above the buildings," Jason suggested. "We'll track him from there." "You want to drive this thing?" Leo grumbled, but he did what Jason asked. After a few minutes, Jason spotted the Storm Spirit again, zipping through the streets with no apparent purpose, blowing over pedestrians, ruffling flags, making cars swerve. "Oh, great," Piper said. "They're two." She was right. A second Ventus blasted around the corner of the Renaissance Hotel and linked up with the first. They wove together in a chaotic dance, shooting to the top of a skyscraper, bending a radio tower and diving back down towards the street. "Those guys do not need any more caffeine," Leo said. "I guess Chicago's a good place to hang out," Piper said. "Nobody's going to question a couple more evil winds." "More than a couple," Jason said. "Look." The dragons circled over a wide avenue next to a lakeside park. Storm spirits were converging, at least a dozen of them, whirling around a big public art installation. "Which one do you think is Dylan?" Leo asked. "I want to throw something at him." But Jason focused on the art installation. The closer they got to it, the faster his heart beat. It was just a public fountain, but it was unpleasantly familiar. 2 5-story monoliths rose from either end of the long granite reflecting pool. The monoliths seemed to be built of video screens, flashing the combined image of a giant face that spewed water into the pool. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but it looked like a high-tech, supersized version of that ruined reflecting pool he'd seen in his dreams, with those 2 dark masses jutting from either end. As Jason watched, the image on the screens changed to a woman's face, with her eyes closed. "Leo," he said nervously. "I see her," Leo said. "I don't like her, but I see her." Then the screens went dark. The venti swirled together like a single funnel cloud and skittered across the fountain, kicking up a waterspout almost as high as the monoliths. They got to its centre, popped off a drain cover, and disappeared underground. "Did they just go down a drain?" Piper asked. "How are we supposed to follow them?" "Maybe we shouldn't," Leo said. "That fountain thing is giving me seriously bad vibes. And aren't we supposed to, beware the earth?" Jason felt the same way, but they had to follow. It was their only way forward. They had to find Hera, and they now had only 2 days until the solstice. "Put us down in that park," he suggested. "We'll check it out on foot." Festus landed in an open area between the lake and the skyline. The sign said Grant Park, and Jason imagined it would have been a nice place in the summer, but now it was a field of ice, snow and salted walkways. The dragon's hot metal feet hissed as they touched down. Festus flapped his wings unhappily and shot fire into the sky, but there was no one around to notice. The wind coming off the lake was bitterly cold. Anyone with sense would be inside. Jason's eyes stung so badly he could barely see. They dismounted, and Festus the dragon stomped his feet. One of his ruby eyes flickered, so it looked like he was blinking. "Is that normal?" Jason added. Leo pulled a rubber mallet from his tool belt. He whacked the dragon's bad eye, and the light went back to normal. "Yes," Leo said. "Festus can't hang around here, though. In the middle of the park. They'll arrest him for loitering. Maybe if I had a dog whistle." He rummaged in his tool belt, but came up with nothing. "Too specialised," he guessed. "Okay, give me a safety whistle. They got that in lots of machine shops." This time Leo pulled out a big plastic orange whistle. "Coach Hedge would be jealous." "Okay, Festus, listen." Leo blew the whistle. The shrill sound probably rolled all the way across Lake Michigan. "You hear that? Come find me, okay? Until then, you fly wherever you want. Just try not to barbecue any pedestrians." The dragon snorted, hopefully in agreement, and then he spread his wings and launched into the air. Piper took one step and winced. "Ah, your ankle." Jason felt bad he'd forgotten about her injury back in the Cyclops factory. "That nectar we gave you might be wearing off." "It's fine." She shivered, and Jason remembered his promise to get her a new snowboarding coat. He hoped he lived long enough to find her one. She took a few more steps with only a slight limp, but Jason could tell she was trying not to grimace. "Let's get out of the wind," he suggested. "Down a drain?" Piper shuddered. "Sounds cosy." They wrapped themselves up as best they could and headed towards the fountain. According to the plaque, it was called Crown Fountain. All the water had emptied out except for a few patches that were starting to freeze. It didn't seem right to Jason that the fountain would have water in it in the winter anyway. Then again, Those big monitors had flashed the face of their mysterious enemy Dirt Woman. Nothing about this place was right. They stepped to the centre of the pool. No spirits tried to stop them. The giant monitor walls stayed dark. The drain hole was easily big enough for a person, and a maintenance ladder led down into the gloom. Jason went first. As he climbed, he braced himself for horrible sewer smells, but it wasn't that bad. The ladder dropped into a brickwork tunnel running north to south. The air was warm and dry, with only a trickle of water on the floor. Piper and Leo climbed down after him. Are all sewers this nice? Piper wondered. No, Leo said. Trust me. Jason frowned. How do you know? Hey man, I ran away 6 times. I've slept in some weird places, okay? Now, which way do we go? Jason tilted his head, listening, and then pointed south. That way. How can you be sure? Piper asked. There's a draft blowing south, Jason said. Maybe the venti went with the flow. It wasn't much of a lead, but nobody offered anything better. Unfortunately, as soon as they started walking, Piper stumbled. Jason had to catch her. Stupid ankle, she cursed. Let's rest, Jason decided. Well, we could all use it. We've been going non-stop for over a day. Leo, can you pull any wood or food from that tool belt? Inside, besides breath mints? Thought you never ask. Chef Leo is on it. Piper and Jason sat on a brick ledge while Leo shuffled through the pack. Jason was glad to rest. He was still tired and dizzy and hungry too, but mostly he wasn't eager to face whatever lay ahead. He turned his gold coin in his fingers. If you were to die, Hera had warned, it will be by her hand. Whoever her was, after Keown, the Cyclops mother, and the weird sleeping lady, the last thing Jason needed was another psycho villainess in his life. It wasn't your fault, Piper said. He looked at her blankly. What? Getting jumped by the Cyclops, she said. It wasn't your fault. He looked down at the coin in his palm. I was stupid. I left you alone and walked into a trap. I should have known. He didn't finish. There were too many things he should have known. Who he was, how to fight monsters, how Cyclopses lured their victims by mimicking voices and hiding in shadows, and 100 other tricks. All that information was supposed to be in his head. He could feel the places it should be, like empty pockets. If Hera wanted him to succeed, why had she stolen the memories that would help him? She claimed his amnesia has kept him alive, but that made no sense. He was starting to understand why Annabeth had wanted to leave the goddess in her cage. Hey, Piper nudged his arm. Cut yourself some slack. Just because you're the son of Zeus doesn't mean you're a one-man army. A few feet away, Leo lit a small cooking fire. He hummed as he pulled supplies out of his pack and his tool belt. In the firelight, Piper's eyes seemed to dance. Jason had been studying them for days now, and he still couldn't decide what colour they were. I know this must suck for you, he said. Not just the quest, I mean. The way I appeared on the bus. The mist messing with your mind, making you think I was... you know. She dropped her gaze. Yeah, well... none of us asked for this. It's not your fault. She tugged at the little braids on each side of her head. Again, Jason thought how glad he was that she'd lost the Aphrodite blessing. With the makeup and the dress and the perfect hair, she looked about 25, glamorous and completely out of his league. He'd never thought of beauty as a form of power, but that's the way Piper had seemed. Powerful. He liked regular Piper better, someone he could hang out with. But the weird thing was, he couldn't quite get that other image out of his head. It hadn't been an illusion. That side of Piper was there too. She just did her best to hide it. Back in the factory, Jason said. You were going to say something about your dad. She traced her finger over the bricks, almost like she was writing out a scream she didn't want to vocalise. Was I? Piper, he said. He's in some kind of trouble, isn't he? Over at the fire, Leo stirred some sizzling bell peppers and meat in a pan. Yeah, baby. Almost there. Piper looked at the verge of tears. Jason, I can't talk about it. We're your friends. Let us help. That seemed to make her feel worse. She took a shaky breath. I wish I could, but... And bingo! Leo announced. He came over with 3 plates stacked on his arms like a waiter. Jason had no idea where he'd got all the food, or how he'd put it together so fast, but it looked amazing. Pepper and beef tacos with chips and salsa. Leo, Piper said in amazement. How did you... Chef Leo's Taco Garage is fixing you up, he said proudly. And by the way, it's tofu, not beef, beauty queen. So don't freak, just dig in. Jason wasn't sure about tofu, but the tacos tasted as good as they smelled. While they ate, Leo tried to lighten the mood and joke around. Jason was grateful Leo was with them. It made being with Piper a little less intense and uncomfortable. At the same time, he kind of wished he was alone with her, but he chided himself for feeling that way. After Piper ate, Jason encouraged her to get some sleep. Without another word, she curled up and put her head in his lap. In 2 seconds, she was snoring. Jason looked up at Leo. He was obviously trying not to laugh. They sat in silence for a few minutes, drinking lemonade Leo had made from canteen water and powdered mix. Good, huh? Leo grinned. You should start a stand, Jason said. Make some serious coin. But as he stared at the embers of the fire, something began to bother him. Leo, about this fire stuff you can do, is it true? Leo's smile faltered. Yeah, well, he opened his hand, and a small ball of flame burst to life, dancing across his palm. That is so cool, Jason said. Why didn't you say anything? Leo closed his hand and the fire went out. Didn't want to look like a freak. I have lightning and wind powers, Jason reminded him. Piper can turn beautiful and charm people into giving her BMWs. You're no more freak than we are. And hey, maybe you can fly too, like jump off a building and yell, Flame on! Leo snorted. If I did that, you would see a flaming kid falling to his death, and I would be yelling something a little stronger than flame on. Trust me, Hephaestus' cabin doesn't see fire powers as cool. Nissa told me they're super rare. When a demigod like me comes around, bad things happen. Really bad. Maybe it's the other way round, Jason suggested. Maybe people with special gifts show up when bad things are happening because that's when they're needed most. Leo cleared away the plates. Maybe, but I'm telling you, it's not always a gift. Jason fell silent. You're talking about your mum, aren't you? The night she died. Leo didn't answer. He didn't have to. The fact that he was quiet, not joking around, that told Jason enough. Leo, her death wasn't your fault. Whatever happened that night, it wasn't because you could summon fire. This dirt woman, whoever she is, has been trying to ruin you for years, mess up your confidence, take away everything you care about. She's trying to make you feel like a failure. You're not. You're important. That's what she said. Leo looked up, his eyes full of pain. She said I was meant to do something important, something that could make or break that big prophecy about the 7 demigods. That's what scares me. I don't know if I'm up to it. Jason wanted to tell him everything would be all right, but it would have sounded fake. Jason didn't know what would happen. They were demigods, which meant sometimes things didn't end okay. Sometimes you got eaten by the Cyclops. If you asked most kids, hey, you want to summon fire or lightning or magical makeup? They'd think it sound pretty cool. But these powers went along with hard stuff, like sitting in a sewer in the middle of winter, running from monsters, losing your memory, watching your friends almost get cooked and having dreams that warned you of your own death. Leo poked at the remains of his fire, turning over red-hot coals with his bare hand. You ever wonder what the other 4 demigods are? I mean, if we're 3 of the ones from the Great Prophecy, who are the others? Where are they? Jason had thought about it all right, but he tried to push it out of his mind. He had a horrible suspicion that he would be expected to lead these other demigods, and he was afraid he would fail. You'll tear each other apart, Boreas had promised. Jason had never trained, never to show fear. Well, he'd been trained to never to show fear. He was sure of that from his dream with the wolves. He was supposed to act confident, even if he didn't feel it. But Leo and Piper were depending on him, and he was terrified of failing them. If he had to lead a group of 6 who might not get along, that would be even worse. I don't know, he said at last. I guess the other 4 will show up when the time is right. Who knows? Maybe they're on some other quest right now. Leo grunted. I bet their sewer is nicer than ours. The draft picked up, blowing towards the south end of the tunnel. Get some rest, Leo, Jason said. I'll take first watch. It was hard to measure time, but Jason figured his friends slept about 4 hours. Jason didn't mind. Now that he was resting, he didn't really feel the need for more sleep. He'd been conked out long enough on the dragon. Plus, he needed time to think about the quest, his sister Thalia and Hera's warnings. He also didn't mind Piper using him for a pillow. She had a cute way of breathing when she slept, inhaling through her nose, exhaling with a little puff through the mouth. He was almost disappointed when she woke up. Finally, they broke camp and started down the tunnel. It twisted and turned and seemed to go on forever. Jason wasn't sure what to expect at the end. A dungeon? A mad scientist lab? Or maybe a sewer reservoir where all porta-potty sludge ends up, forming an evil toilet face large enough to swallow the world. Instead, they found polished steel elevator doors, each one engraved with a cursive letter M. Next to the elevator was a directory, like for a department store. M for Macy's? Piper guessed. I think they have one in downtown Chicago. Or Monocle Motors still, Leo said. Guys, read the directory. It's messed up. Parking, kennels, main entrance, sewer level. Furnishings and Cafe M, 1. Women's fashion and magical appliances, 2. Menswear and weaponry, 3. Cosmetics, potions, poisons and sundries, 4. Kennels for what? Piper said. And what kind of department store has its entrance in a sewer? Or sells poisons, Leo said. Man, what does sundries even mean? Is it like underwear? Jason took a deep breath. When in doubt, start at the top. The doors slid open on the 4th floor, and the scent of perfume wafted into the elevator. Jason stepped out first, sword ready. "Guys," he said, "you've got to see this." Piper joined him and caught her breath. This is not Macy's. The department store looked like the inside of a kaleidoscope. The entire ceiling was a stained glass mosaic with astrological signs around a giant sun. The daylight streaming through it washed everything in 1,000 different colours. The upper floors made a ring of balconies around a huge central atrium, so they could see all the way down to the ground floor. Gold railings glittered so brightly they were hard to look at. Aside from the stained glass ceiling and the elevator, Jason couldn't see any other windows or doors, but 2 sets of glass escalators ran between the levels. The carpeting was a riot of oriental patterns and colours, and the racks of merchandise were just as bizarre. There was too much to take in at once, but Jason saw a normal stuff, like a shirt rack, and shoe trees mixed in with armoured mannequins, beds of nails and fur coats that seemed to be moving. Leo stepped to the railing and looked down. Check it out! In the middle of the atrium, a fountain sprayed water 20 feet into the air, changing colour from red to yellow to the blue. The pool glittered with gold coins, and on either side of the fountain stood a gilded cage, like an oversized canary cage. Inside one, a miniature hurricane swirled and lightning flashed. Somebody had imprisoned the storm spirits, and the cage shuddered as they tried to get out. In the other, frozen like a statue, was a short, buff satyr, holding a tree branch club. "Coach Hedge," Piper said. "We've got to get down there." A voice said, "May I help you find something?" All 3 of them jumped back. A woman had just appeared in front of them. She wore an elegant black dress with diamond jewellery. She looked like a retired fashion model, maybe 50 years old, though it was hard for Jason to judge. Her long dark hair swept over one shoulder, and her face was gorgeous in that surreal supermodel way, thin and haughty and cold, not quite human. With their long red painted nails, her fingers looked more like talons. She smiled. "I'm so happy to see new customers. How may I help you?" Leo glanced at Jason like, "All yours." Jason started. "Is this your store?" The woman nodded. "I found it abandoned, you know. I understand so many stores are these days. I decided it would make the perfect place. I love collecting tasteful objects, helping people and offering quality goods at a reasonable price. So this seemed a good, how do you say, first acquisition in this country?" She spoke with a pleasing accent, but Jason couldn't guess where from. Clearly she wasn't hostile, though. Jason started to relax. Her voice was rich and exotic. Jason wanted to hear more. "So, you're new to America?" he asked. "I am new," the woman agreed. "I am the Princess of Colchis. My friends call me Your Highness. Now, what are you looking for?" Jason had heard of rich foreigners buying American department stores. Of course, most of the time they didn't sell poisons, living fur coats, storm spirits or satyrs, but still, with a nice voice like that, the Princess of Colchis couldn't be all bad. Piper poked him in the ribs. "Jason. Right, actually, Your Highness." He pointed to the gilded cage on the 1st floor. "That's our friend down there, Gleason Hedge, the satyr. Could we, have him back, please?" "Of course." The princess agreed immediately. "I would love to show you my inventory. First, may I know your names?" Jason hesitated. It seemed like a bad idea to give out their names. A memory tugged at the back of his mind. Something Hera had warned him about. But it seemed fuzzy. On the other hand, Her Highness was on the verge of cooperating. If they could get what they wanted without a fight, that would be better. Besides, this lady didn't seem like an enemy. Piper started to say, "Jason, I wouldn't." "This is Piper," he said. "This is Leo. I'm Jason." The princess fixed her eyes on him, and just for a moment, her face literally glowed, blazing with so much anger that Jason could see her skull beneath her skin. Jason's mind was getting blurrier, but he knew something didn't seem right. Then the moment passed, and Her Highness looked like a normal, elegant woman again, with a cordial smile and a soothing voice. "Jason, what an interesting name," she said, her eyes as cold as the Chicago wind. "I think we'll have to make a special deal for you. Come, children, let's go shopping." Chapter 27. Piper. Piper wanted to run for the elevator. Her second choice, attack the weird princess now, because she was sure a fight was coming. The way the lady's face glowed when she'd heard Jason's name had been bad enough. Now Her Highness was smiling like nothing had happened, and Jason and Leo didn't seem to think anything was wrong. The princess gestured towards the cosmetics counter. "Shall we start with the potions?" "Cool," Jason said. "Guys," Piper interrupted, "we're here to get the storm spirits and Coach Hedge. If this princess is really our friend..." "Oh, I'm better than a friend, my dear," Her Highness said. "I'm a saleswoman." Her diamonds sparkled, and her eyes glittered like a snake's, cold and dark. Don't worry. We'll work our way down to the first floor, eh? Leo nodded eagerly. Yeah, sure, yeah, that sounds okay. Right, Piper? Piper did her best to stare daggers at him. No, it's not okay. Of course it's okay. Her Highness put her hands on Leo's and Jason's shoulders and steered them towards the cosmetics. Come along, boys. Piper didn't have much choice except to follow. She hated department stores, mostly because she'd got caught stealing from several of them. Well, not exactly caught and not exactly stealing. She talked salesmen into giving her computers, new boots, a gold ring, once even a lawnmower, though she had no idea why she wanted one. She never kept the stuff. She just did it to get her dad's attention. Usually, she talked her neighbourhood UPS guy into taking the stuff back. But of course, the salesman she duped always came to their senses and called the police, who eventually tracked her down. Anyway, she wasn't thrilled to be back in a department store, especially one run by a crazy princess who glowed in the dark. And here, the princess said, is the finest assortment of magical mixtures anywhere. The counter was crammed with bubbling beakers and smoking vials on tripods. Lining the display shelves were crystal flasks, some shaped like swans or honey bear dispensers. The liquids inside were every colour, from glowing white to polka-dotted. And the smells, some were pleasant, like fresh-baked cookies or roses, but they were mixed with the scents of burning tyres, skunk spray and gym lockers. The princess pointed to a blood-red vial, a simple test tube with a cork stopper. This one will heal any disease. Even cancer? Leo asked. Leprosy? Hangnails? Any disease, sweet boy. And this vial, she pointed to a swan-shaped container with blue liquid inside, will kill you, very painfully. Awesome, Jason said. His voice sounded dazed and sleepy. Jason, Piper said, we've got a job to do, remember? She tried to put power into her words to snap him out of his trance with charm speak, but her voice sounded shaky even to her. This princess woman scared her too much, made her confidence crumble, just the way she'd felt back in the Aphrodite cabin with Drew. Job to do, Jason muttered. Sure, but shopping first, okay? The princess beamed at him. Then we have potions for resisting fire. Got that covered, Leo said. Indeed. The princess studied Leo's face more closely. You don't appear to be wearing my trademark sunscreen, but no matter. We also have potions that cause blindness, insanity, sleep, or... Wait. Piper was still staring at the red vial. Could that potion cure lost memory? The princess narrowed her eyes. Possibly, yes. Quite possibly. Why, my dear? Have you forgotten something important? Piper tried to keep her expression neutral, but if that vial could cure Jason's memory... Do I really want that? She wondered. If Jason found out who he was, he might not even be her friend. Hera had taken away his memories for a reason. She told him it was the only way he'd survive at Camp Half-Blood. What if Jason found out that he was their enemy or something? He might come out of his amnesia and decide he hated Piper. He might have a girlfriend wherever he came from. It doesn't matter, she decided. What kind of surprised her? Jason always looked so anguished when he tried to remember things. Piper hated seeing him that way. She wanted to help him because she cared about him, even if that meant losing him. And maybe it would make this trip through her craziness's department store more worthwhile. How much? Piper asked. The princess got a faraway look in her eyes. Well now, the price is always tricky. I love helping people. Honestly, I do. And I always help my bargains. Well, I keep them, but sometimes people try to cheat me. Her gaze drifted to Jason. Once, for instance, I met a handsome young man who wanted a treasure from my father's kingdom. We made a bargain, and I promised to help him steal it. From your own dad? Jason still looked half in a trance, but the idea seemed to bother him. Oh, don't worry, the princess said. I demanded a high price. The young man had to take me away with him. He was quite good-looking, dashing, strong. She looked at Piper. I'm sure, my dear, you understand how one might be attracted to such a hero and want to help him. Piper tried to control her emotions, but she probably blushed. She got the creepiest feeling the princess could read her thoughts. She also found the princess's story disturbingly familiar. Pieces of old myths she'd read with her dad started coming together, but this woman couldn't be the one she was thinking of. At any rate, Her Highness continued, my hero had to do many impossible tasks, and I'm not bragging when I say he could have done them without me. He couldn't do them. I betrayed my own family to win the hero his prize, and still he cheated me of my payment. Cheated? Jason frowned, as if trying to remember something important. That's messed up, Leo said. Her Highness patted his cheek affectionately. I'm sure you don't need to worry, Leo. You seem honest. You would always pay a fair price, wouldn't you? Leo nodded. What were we buying again? I'll take 2. Piper broke in. So the vial, your Highness, how much? The princess assessed Piper's clothes, her face, her posture, as if putting a price tag on one slightly used demigod. "Would you give anything for it, my dear?" the princess asked. "I sense that you would." The words washed over Piper as powerfully as a good surfing wave. The force of the suggestion nearly lifted her off her feet. She wanted to pay any price. She wanted to say yes. Then her stomach twisted. Piper realised she was being charm-spoken. She'd sensed something like it before, when Drew spoke at the campfire, but this was 1,000 times more potent. No wonder her friends were dazed. Was this what people felt like when Piper used charm-speak? A feeling of guilt settled over her. She summoned all her willpower. "No, I won't pay any price, but a fair price maybe. After that we need to leave, right guys?" Just for a moment her words seemed to have some effect. The boys looked confused. "Leave?" Jason said. "You mean after shopping?" Leo asked. Piper wanted to scream, but the princess tilted her head, examining Piper with newfound respect. "Impressive," the princess said. "Not many people could resist my suggestions." "Are you a child of Aphrodite, my dear?" "Ah, yes. I should have seen it. No matter. Perhaps we should shop a while longer before you decide what to buy, eh?" "But the vial." "Now, boys." She turned to Jason and Leo. Her voice was so much more powerful than Piper's, so full of confidence. Piper didn't stand a chance. "Would you like to see more?" "Sure," Jason said. "Okay," Leo said. "Excellent," the princess said. "You'll need all the help you can get if you're to make it to the Bay Area." Piper's hand moved to her dagger. She thought about her dream of the mountain top, the scene Enceladus had drawn her, a place she knew, where she was supposed to betray her friends in 2 days. "The Bay Area," Piper said. "Why the Bay Area?" The princess smiled. "Well, that's where they'll die, isn't it?" And then she led them towards the escalators, Jason and Leo still looking excited to shop. Chapter 28. Piper. Piper cornered the princess as Jason and Leo went off to check out the living fur coats. "You want them shopping for their deaths?" Piper demanded. The princess blew dust off a display case of swords. "I'm a seer, my dear. I know your little secret, but we don't want to dwell on that, do we? The boys are having such fun." Leo laughed as he tried on a hat that seemed to be made from enchanted raccoon fur. Its ringed tail twitched and its little legs wiggled frantically as Leo walked. Jason was ogling the men's sportswear. Boys interested in shopping for clothes, a definite sign they were under an evil spell. Piper glared at the princess. "Who are you?" "I told you, my dear. I'm the Princess of Colchis." "Where's Colchis?" The princess's expression turned a little sad. "Where was Colchis, you mean? My father ruled the far shores of the Black Sea, so far to the east as a Greek ship could sail in those days. But Colchis is no more, lost eons ago." "Eons?" Piper asked. The princess looked no more than 50, but a bad feeling started settling over Piper, something King Boreas had mentioned back in Quebec. "How old are you?" The princess laughed. "A lady should avoid asking or answering that question. Let's just say the immigration process to enter your country took quite a while. My patron finally brought me through. She made all this possible." The princess swept her hand around the department store. Piper's mouth tasted like metal. "Your patron?" "Oh, yes. She doesn't bring just anyone through. Mind you, only those who have special talents, such as me. And really, she insists on so little. A store entrance that must be underground so she can monitor my clientele. And a favour now and then in exchange for a new life. Really, it was the best bargain I'd made in centuries." "Run," Piper thought. "We have to get out of here." But before she could even turn her thoughts into words, Jason called, "Hey, check it out." From a rack labelled distressed clothing, he held up a purple T-shirt, like the one he'd worn on the school field trip, except this shirt looked as if it had been clawed by tigers. Jason frowned. "Why does this look so familiar?" "Jason, it's like yours," Piper said. "Now we really have to leave." But she wasn't sure he could even hear her anymore through the princess's enchantment. "Nonsense," the princess said. "The boys aren't done, are they? And yes, my dear, those shirts are very popular. Trade-ins from previous customers. It suits you." Leo picked up an orange Camp Half-Blood tee with a hole through the middle, as if it had been hit by a javelin. Next to that was a dented bronze breastplate, pitted with corrosion. Acid, maybe? And a Roman toga slashed to pieces and stained with something that looked disturbingly like dried blood. "Your Highness," Piper said, trying to control her nerves, "why don't you tell the boys how you betrayed your family? I'm sure they'd like to hear that story." Her words didn't have any effect on the princess, but the boys turned, suddenly interested. "More story?" Leo asked. "I like more story," Jason agreed. The princess flashed Piper an irritated look. "Oh, one will do strange things for love, Piper. You should know that. I fell for that young hero, in fact, because your mother Aphrodite had me under a spell. If it wasn't for her, but I can't hold a grudge against a goddess, can I? The princess's tone made her meaning clear. I can take it out on you. But that hero took you with him when he fled Colchis, Piper remembered. Didn't he, your highness? He married you just as he promised. The look in the princess's eyes made Piper want to apologise, but she didn't back down. At first, her highness admitted, it seemed he would keep his word, but even after I helped him steal my father's treasure, he still needed my help. As we fled, my brother's fleet came after us. His warships overtook us. He would have destroyed us, but I convinced my brother to come aboard our ship first and talk under a flag of truce. He trusted me. And you killed your own brother, Piper said, the horrible story all coming back to her, along with the name, an infamous name that began with the letter M. What? Jason stirred. For a moment he looked almost like himself. Killed your own? No, the princess snapped. Those stories are lies. It was my new husband and his men who killed my brother, though they couldn't have done it without my deception. They threw his body into the sea, and the pursuing fleet had to stop and search for it, so they could give my brother a proper burial. This gave us time to get away. All this I did for my husband, and he forgot our bargain. He betrayed me in the end. Jason still looked uncomfortable. What did he do? The princess held the sliced-up toga against Jason's chest, as if measuring him for an assassination. Don't you know the story, my boy? You of all people should. You were named for him. Jason, Piper said. The original Jason. But then you should be dead. The princess smiled. As I said, a new life in a new country. Certainly I made mistakes. I turned my back on my own people. I was called a traitor, a thief, a liar, a murderess. But I acted out of love. She turned to the boys and gave them a pitiful look, batting her eyelashes. Piper could feel the sorcery washing over them, taking control, more firmly than ever. Wouldn't you do the same for someone you loved, my dears? Oh, sure, Jason said. Okay, Leo said. Guys! Piper ground her teeth in frustration. Don't you see who she is? Don't you? Let's continue, shall we? The princess said breezily. I believe you wanted us to talk about a price for the storm spirits and your satyr. Leo got distracted on the second floor with the appliances. No way, he said. Is that an armoured forge? Before Piper could stop him, he hopped off the escalator and ran over to a big oval oven that looked like a barbecue on steroids. When they caught up with him, the princess said, You have good taste. This is the H2000, designed by Hephaestus himself. Hot enough to melt celestial bronze or imperial gold. Jason flinched, as if he recognised that term. Imperial gold. The princess nodded. Yes, my dear. Like that weapon so cleverly concealed in your pocket. To be properly forged, imperial gold had to be consecrated in the temple of Jupiter on Capitoline Hill in Rome. Quite a powerful and rare metal, but, like the Roman emperors, quite volatile. Be sure never to break that blade. She smiled pleasantly. Rome was after my time, of course, but I do hear stories. And now, over here. The golden throne is one of my finest luxury items. Hephaestus made it as a punishment for his brother Hera. Sit in it, and you'll be immediately trapped. Leo, apparently, took this as an order. He began walking towards it in a trance. Leo, don't, Piper warned. He blinked. How much for both? On the seat, I could let you have 4 or 5 great deeds, the forge 7 years of servitude, and for only a bit of your strength. She led Leo into the appliance section, giving him prices on various items. Piper didn't want to leave him alone with her, but she had to try reasoning with Jason. She pulled him aside and slapped him across the face. Ow, he muttered sleepily. What was that for? Snap out of it, Piper hissed. What do you mean? She's charm-speaking you, can't you feel it? He knitted his eyebrows. She seems okay. She's not okay. She shouldn't even be alive. She was married to Jason. The other Jason, 3,000 years ago. Remember what Boreas said? Something about the souls no longer being confined to Hades. It's not just monsters who can't stay dead. She's come back from the underworld. Jason shook his head uneasily. She's not a ghost. No, she's worse. She's... Children! The princess was back with Leo in tow. If you please, we will now see what you came for. This is what you want, yes? Piper had to choke back a scream. She was tempted to pull out her dagger and take on this witch herself, but she didn't like her chances. Not in the middle of Her Highness's department store, while her friends were under a spell. Piper couldn't even be sure they'd take her side in a fight. She had to figure out a better plan. They took the escalator down to the base of the fountain. For the first time, Piper noticed 2 large bronze sundials, each about the size of a trampoline, inlaid in the marble tile floor to the north and south of the fountain. The gilded, oversized canary cages stood to the east and west, and the furthest one held the storm spirits. They were so densely packed, spinning around like a super-concentrated tornado, that Piper couldn't tell how many there were. Dozens at least. "Hey," Leo said. "Coach Hedge looks okay." They ran to the nearest canary cage. The old satyr seemed to have been petrified at the moment he was sucked into the sky above the Grand Canyon. He was frozen mid-shout, his club raised over his head like he was ordering the gym class to drop and give him 50. His curly hair stuck up at odd angles. If Piper just concentrated on certain details, the bright orange polo shirt, the wispy goatee, the whistle around his neck, she could imagine Coach Hedge as his good old annoying self. But it was hard to ignore the stubby horns on his head and the fact that he had furry goat legs and hooves instead of workout pants and Nikes. "Yes," the princess said, "I always keep my wares in good condition. We can certainly barter for the storm spirits and the satyr. A package deal. If we come to terms, I'll even throw in the vial of healing potion and you can go in peace." She gave Piper a shrewd look. "That's better than starting unpleasantness, isn't it, dear?" "Don't trust her," warned a voice in her head. If Piper was right about this lady's identity, nobody would be leaving in peace. A fair deal wasn't possible. It was all a trick. But her friends were looking at her, nodding urgently and mouthing, "Say yes." Piper needed more time to think. "We can negotiate," she said. "Totally," Leo agreed. "Name your price." "Leo," Piper snapped. The princess chuckled. "Name any price? Perhaps not the best haggling strategy, my boy, but at least you know a thing's value. Freedom is very valuable indeed. You would ask me to release this satyr who attacked my storm winds." "Who attacked us?" Piper interjected. Her Highness shrugged. "As I said, my patron asks me for small favours from time to time. Sending the storm spirits to abduct you, that was one. I assure you it was nothing personal, and no harm done, as you came here in the end of your own free will. At any rate, you want the satyr freed, and you want my storm spirits, who are very valuable servants, by the way. So, you can hand them over to that tyrant Aeolus. Doesn't seem quite fair, does it? The price will be high." Piper could see that her friends were ready to offer anything, promise anything. Before they could speak, she played her last card. "You're Medea," she said. "You helped the original Jason steal the golden fleece. You're one of the most evil villains in Greek mythology. Jason, Leo, don't trust her." Piper put all the intensity she could gather into those words. She was utterly sincere, and it seemed to have some effect. Jason stepped away from the sorceress. Leo scratched his head and looked around like he was coming out of a dream. "What are we doing again? Boys!" The princess spread her hands in a welcoming gesture. Her diamond jewellery glittered, and her painted fingers curled like blood-tipped claws. "It's true. I'm Medea. But I'm so misunderstood. Oh, Piper, my dear, you don't know what it was like for a woman in the old days. We had no power, no leverage. Often we couldn't even choose our own husbands. But I was different. I chose my own destiny by becoming a sorceress. Is that so wrong? I made a pact with Jason, my help to win the fleece in exchange for his love. A fair deal? He became a famous hero. Without me, he would have died unknown on the shores of Colchis." Jason. Piper's Jason scowled. "Then you really did die 3,000 years ago. You came back from the underworld?" "Death no longer holds me, young hero," Medea said. "Thanks to my patron, I am flesh and blood again." "You reformed," Leo blinked. "Like a monster." Medea spread her fingers, and steam hissed from her nails, like water splashed on hot iron. "You have no idea what's happening, do you, my dears? It is so much worse than a stirring of monsters from Tartarus. My patron knows that giants and monsters are not her greatest servants. I am mortal. I learned from my mistakes, and now that I have returned to the living, I will not be cheated again. Now, here is my price for what you ask." "Guys," Piper said, "the original Jason left Medea because she was crazy and bloodthirsty." "Lies!" Medea said. "On the way back from Colchis, Jason's ship landed at another kingdom, and Jason agreed to dump Medea and marry the king's daughter. After I bore him 2 children, Medea said. Still he broke his promise. I ask you, was that right?" Jason and Leo dutifully shook their heads, but Piper wasn't through. "It may not have been right," she said, "but neither was Medea's revenge. She murdered her own children to get back at Jason. She poisoned his new wife and fled the kingdom." Medea snarled, "An invention to ruin my reputation. The people of the Corinth, that unruly mob, killed my children and drove me out. Jason did nothing to protect me. He robbed me of everything. So yes, I sneaked back into the palace and poisoned the lovely new bride. It was only fair, a suitable price." "You're insane," Piper said. "I am the victim," Medea said, and she wailed. "I died with my dreams shattered." but no longer. I know now not to trust heroes when they come asking for treasures. They will pay a heavy price, especially when the one asking has the name of Jason. The fountain turned bright red. Piper drew her dagger, but her hand was shaking almost too badly to hold it. Jason, Leo, it's time to go. Now. Before you've closed the deal? Medea asked. What of your quest, boys? And my price is so easy. Did you know this fountain is magic? It's a dead man. If a dead man were to be thrown into it, even if he was chopped to pieces, he would pop back out fully formed, stronger and more powerful than ever. Seriously? Leo asked. Leo, she's lying, Piper said. She did that trick with somebody before, a king, I think. She convinced his daughters to cut him to pieces so he could come out of the water young and healthy again. But it just killed him. Ridiculous, Medea said, and Piper could hear the power charged in every syllable. Leo, Jason, my price is so simple. Why don't you two fight? If you get injured or even killed, no problem. We'll just throw you into the fountain and you'll be better than ever. You do want to fight, don't you? You resent each other. Guys, no, Piper said. But they were already glaring at each other, as if it were just dawning on them how they really felt. Piper had never felt more helpless. Now she understood what real sorcery looked like. She'd always thought magic meant wands and fireballs, but this was worse. Medea didn't just rely on poisons and potions. Her most potent weapon was her voice. Leo scowled. Jason's always the star. He always gets the attention and takes me for granted. You're annoying, Leo, Jason said. You never take anything seriously. You can't even fix a dragon. Stop, Piper pleaded, but both drew weapons. Jason, his gold sword, and Leo, a hammer from his tool belt. Let them go, Piper, Medea urged. I'm doing you a favour. Let it happen now and it will make your choice so much easier. Enceladus will be pleased. You could have your father back today. Medea's charm speak didn't work on her, but the sorceress still had a persuasive voice. Her father back today. Despite her best intentions, Piper wanted that. She wanted her father back so much it hurt. You work for Enceladus, she said. Medea laughed. Serve a giant? No, but we all serve the same great cause. A patron you cannot begin to challenge. Walk away, child of Aphrodite. This does not have to be your death too. Save yourself and your father can go free. Leo and Jason were still facing off, ready to fight, but they looked unsteady and confused, waiting for another order. Part of them had to be resisting, Piper hoped. This went completely against their nature. Listen to me, girl. Medea plucked a diamond off her bracelet and threw it into a spray of water from the fountain. As it passed through the multicoloured light, Medea said, O Iris, goddess of the rainbow, show me the office of Tristan MacLean. The mist shimmered, and Piper saw her father's study. Sitting behind his desk, talking on the phone, was her dad's assistant, Jane, in her dark business suit, her hair swirled in a tight bun. Hello, Jane, Medea said. Jane hung up the phone calmly. How can I help you, Mum? Hello, Piper. You? Piper was so angry she could hardly talk. Yes, child, Medea said. Your father's assistant, quite easy to manipulate. An organised mind for a mortal, but incredibly weak. Thank you, Mum, Jane said. Don't mention it, Medea said. I just wanted to congratulate you, Jane, getting Mr. MacLean to leave town so suddenly. Take his jet to Oakland without alerting the press or the police. Well done. No one seems to know where he's gone. And telling him his daughter's life was on the line, that was a nice touch to get his cooperation. Yes, Jane agreed in a bland tone, as if she was sleepwalking. He was quite cooperative when he believed Piper was in danger. Piper looked down at her dagger. The blade trembled in her hand. She couldn't use it for a weapon any better than Helen of Troy could, but it was still a looking-glass, and what she saw in it was a scared girl with no chance of winning. I may have new orders for you, Jane, Medea said. If the girl cooperates, it may be time for Mr. MacLean to come home. Would you arrange a suitable cover story for his absence, just in case? And I imagine the poor man will need some time in a psychiatric hospital. Yes, ma'am, I will stand by. The image faded, and Medea turned to Piper. There, you see? You lured my dad into a trap, Piper said. You helped the giant. Oh, please, dear, you'll work yourself into a fit. I've been preparing for this war for years, even before I was brought back to life. I'm a seer, as I said. I can tell the future as well as your little oracle. Years ago, still suffering in the fields of punishment, I had a vision of the 7 in your so-called great prophecy. I saw your friend Leo here, and saw that he would be an important enemy someday. I stirred the consciousness of my patron, gave her this information, and she managed to wake just a little, just enough to visit him. Leo's mother, Piper said. Leo, listen to this. She helped get your mother killed. Uh-huh, Leo mumbled in a daze. He frowned at his hammer. So, I just attack Jason, that's okay? Perfectly safe, Medea promised. And Jason, strike him hard. Show me you are worthy of your namesake. No, Piper ordered. She knew it was her last chance. Jason, Leo, she's tricking you. Put down your weapons. The sorceress rolled her eyes. Please, girl, you're no match for me. I trained with my aunt, the immortal Circe. I can drive men mad or heal them with my voice. What hope do you have? What hope do these puny young heroes have against me? Now, boys, kill each other. Jason, Leo, listen to me. Piper put all her emotion into her voice. For years she'd been trying to control herself and not show weakness, but now she poured everything into her words. Her fear, her desperation, her anger. She knew she might be signing her dad's death warrant, but she cared too much about her friends to let them hurt each other. Medea is charming you. It's part of her magic. You are best friends. Don't fight each other. Fight her. They hesitated, and Piper could feel the spell shatter. Jason blinked. Leo, was I just about to stab you? Something about my mother. Leo frowned, and then turned towards Medea. You're working for Dirt Woman. You sent her to the machine shop. He lifted his arm. Lady, I've got a £3 hammer with your name on it. Pah! Medea sneered. I'll simply collect payment another way. She pressed one of the mosaic tiles on the floor, and the building rumbled. Jason swung his sword at Medea, but she dissolved into smoke and reappeared at the base of the escalator. You're slow, hero, she laughed. Take your frustration out on my pets. Before Jason could go after her, the giant bronze sundials at either end of the fountain swung open. Two snarling gold beasts, fresh and blood-winged dragons, crawled out from the pits below. Each was the size of a camper van, maybe not large compared to Festus, but large enough. So, that's what's in the kennels, Leo said meekly. The dragons spread their wings and hissed. Piper could feel the heat coming off their glittering skin. One turned his angry orange eyes on her. Don't look them in the eye, Jason warned. They'll paralyze you. Indeed. Medea was leisurely, riding the escalator up, leaning against the handrail as she watched the fun. These two dears have been with me a long time. Sun dragons, you know. Gifts from my grandfather Helios. They pulled my chariot when I left Corinth, and now they will be your destruction. Ta-ta! The dragons lunged. Leo and Jason charged to intercept. Piper was amazed how fearlessly the boys attacked, working like a team who had trained together for years. Medea was almost to the second floor, when she'd been able to choose from a wide assortment of deadly appliances. Oh, no, you don't, Piper growled, and took off after her. When Medea spotted Piper, she started climbing in earnest. She was quick for a 3,000-year-old lady. Piper climbed at top speed, taking the steps 3 at a time, and still she couldn't catch her. Medea didn't stop at floor 2. She hopped the next escalator and continued to ascend. The potions, Piper thought. Of course, that's what she would go for. She was famous for potions. Down below, Piper heard the battle raging. Leo was blowing his safety whistle, and Jason was yelling to keep the dragon's attention. Piper didn't dare look, not while she was running with a dagger in her hand. She could just see herself tripping and stabbing herself in the nose. That would be super heroic. She grabbed a shield from an armoured mannequin on floor 3 and continued to climb. She imagined Coach Hedge yelling in her mind, just like back in gym class at Wilderness School. Move it, McLean. You call that escalator climbing? She reached the top floor, breathing hard, but she was too late. Medea had reached the potions counter. The sorceress grabbed a swan-shaped vial, the blue one that caused painful death. And Piper did the only thing that came to mind. She threw her shield. Medea turned triumphantly just in time to get hit in the chest by a 50-pound metal frisbee. She stumbled backwards, crashing over the counter, breaking vials and knocking down shelves. When the sorceress stood from the wreckage, her dress was stained a dozen different colours. Many of the stains were smouldering and glowing. Fool! Medea wailed. Do you have any idea what so many potions will do when mixed? Kill you? Piper said hopefully. The carpet began to steam around Medea's feet. She coughed and her face contorted in pain. Or was she faking? Below, Leo called. Jason, help! Piper risked a quick look and almost sobbed in despair. One of the dragons had Leo pinned to the floor. It was baring its fangs, ready to snap. Jason was all the way across the room, battling the other dragon, much too far away to assist. You've doomed us all, Medea screamed. Smoke was rolling across the carpet as the stain spread, throwing sparks and setting fires in the clothing racks. You have only seconds before this concoction consumes everything and destroys the building. There's no time. Crash! The stained glass ceiling splintered in a rain of multicoloured shards, and Festus, the bronze dragon, dropped into the department store. He hurtled into the fray, snatching up a sun dragon in each claw. Only now did Piper appreciate just how big and strong their metal friend was. "That's my boy," Leo yelled. Festus flew halfway up the atrium, and then hurled the sun dragons into the pits they'd come from. Leo raced to the fountain and pressed the marble tile, closing the sundials. They shuddered as the dragons banged against them, trying to get out, but for the moment they were contained. Medea cursed in some ancient language. The whole fourth floor was on fire now. The air filled with noxious gas. Even with the roof open, Piper could feel the heat intensifying. She backed up to the edge of the railing, keeping her dagger pointed towards Medea. "I will not be abandoned again." The sorceress knelt and snatched up the red healing potion, which had somehow survived the crash. "You want your boyfriend's memory restored? Take me with you." Piper glanced behind her. Leo and Jason were on board Festus's back. The bronze dragon flapped his mighty wings, snatched the two cages with the satyr and the storm spirits in his claws, and began to ascend. The building rumbled. Fire and the smoke curled up the walls, melting the railings, turning the air to acid. "You'll never survive your quest without me," Medea growled. "Your boy hero will stay ignorant forever, and your father will die. Take me with you." For one heartbeat, Piper was tempted, and then she saw Medea's grim smile. The sorceress was confident in her powers of persuasion, confident that she could always make a deal, always escape and win in the end. "Not today, witch." Piper jumped over the side. She plummeted for only a second before Leo and Jason caught her, hauling her aboard the dragon. She heard Medea screaming in rage as they soared through the broken roof and over downtown Chicago. Then the department store exploded behind them. Chapter 29. Leo. Leo kept looking back. He half expected to see those nasty sun dragons toting a flying chariot with a screaming magical saleswoman throwing potions, but nothing followed them. He steered the dragon towards the southwest. Eventually the smoke from the burning department store faded in the distance, but Leo didn't relax until the suburbs of Chicago gave way to snowy fields and the sun began to set. "Good job, Festus." He patted the dragon's metal hide. "You were awesome." The dragon shuddered, gears popped and clicked in his neck. Leo frowned. He didn't like those noises. If the control disc was failing again, no, hopefully it was something minor, something he could fix. "I'll give you a tune-up next time we land," Leo promised. "You've earned some motor oil and Tabasco sauce." Festus whirled his teeth, but even that sounded weak. He flew at a steady pace, his great wings angling to catch the wind. But he was carrying a heavy load. 2 cages in his claws, plus 3 people on his back. The more Leo thought about it, the more worried he got. Even metal dragons had limits. "Leo," Piper patted his shoulder. "You feeling okay?" "Yeah, not bad for a brainwashed zombie." He hoped he didn't look as embarrassed as he felt. "Thanks for saving us back there, beauty queen. If you hadn't talked me out of that spell..." "Don't worry about it," Piper said. But Leo worried a lot. He felt terrible about how easily Medea had set him against his best friend, and those feelings hadn't come from nowhere. His resentment of the way Jason always got the spotlight and didn't really seem to need him. Leo did feel that way sometimes, even if he wasn't proud of it. What bothered him more was the news about his mum. Medea had seen the future down in the underworld. That was how her patron, the woman in the black earthen robes, had come to the machine shop 7 years ago to scare him, ruin his life. That was how his mother had died, because of something Leo might do someday. So in a weird way, even if his fire powers weren't to blame, Mum's death was still his fault. When they had left Medea in that exploding store, Leo had felt a little too good. He hoped she wouldn't make it out and would go right back to the fields of punishment, where she belonged. Those feelings didn't make him proud either. And if souls were coming back from the underworld, was it possible Leo's mum could be brought back? He tried to put the idea aside. That was Frankenstein thinking. It was natural, but it wasn't right. Medea might have been brought back to life, but she hadn't seemed quite human, with the hissing nails and the glowing head and whatnot. No, Leo's mum had passed on. Thinking any other way just drives Leo nuts. Still, the thought kept poking at him, like an echo of Medea's voice. "We're going to have to put down soon," he warned his friends. "A couple more hours, maybe, to make sure Medea's not following us. I don't think Festus can fly much longer than that." "Yeah," Piper agreed. "Coach Hedge probably wants to get out of his canary cage too. Question is, where are we going?" "The Bay Area," Leo guessed. His memories of the department store were fuzzy, but he seemed to remember hearing that. Didn't Medea say something about Oakland? Piper didn't respond for so long, Leo wondered if he'd said something wrong. Piper's dad, Jason put in. Something's happened to your dad, right? He got lured into some kind of trap? Piper let out a shaky breath. Look, Medea said you would both die in the Bay Area, and besides, even if we went there, the Bay Area is huge. First we need to find Aeolus and drop off the storm spirits. Boreas said Aeolus was the only one who could tell us exactly where to go. Leo grunted. So how do we find Aeolus? Jason leaned forward. You mean you don't see it? He pointed ahead of them, but Leo didn't see anything except clouds and the lights of a few towns glowing in the dusk. What? Leo asked. That. Whatever it is, Jason said. In the air. Leo glanced back. Piper looked just as confused as he was. Right, Leo said. Could you be more specific on the whatever it is part? Like a vapour trail, Jason said. Except it's glowing. Really faint, but it's definitely there. We've been following it since Chicago, so I figured you saw it. Leo shook his head. Maybe Festus can sense it. You think Aeolus made it? Well, it's a magic trail in the wind, Jason said. Aeolus is the wind god. I think he knows we've got prisoners for him. He's telling us where to fly. Or it's another trap, Piper said. Her tone worried Leo. She didn't just sound nervous, she sounded broken with despair, like they'd already sealed their fate and like it was her fault. Pipes, you all right? He asked. Don't call me that. Okay, fine. You don't like any of the names I make up for you, but if your dad's in trouble and we can help, you can't, she said, her voice getting shakier. Look, I'm tired, if you don't mind. She leaned back against Jason and closed her eyes. All right, Leo thought. Pretty clear signal she didn't want to talk. They flew in silence for a while. Festus seemed to know where he was going. He kept his course, gently curving towards the southwest and hopefully Aeolus's fortress. Another wind god to visit. A whole new flavour of crazy. Oh boy, Leo couldn't wait. He had way too much on his mind to sleep, but now that he was out of danger, his body had different ideas. His energy level was crashing. The monotonous beat of the dragon's wings made his eyes feel heavy. His head started to nod. Catch a few Zeds, Jason said. It's cool. Hand me the reins. Nah, I'm okay. Leo, Jason said, you're not a machine. Besides, I'm the only one who can see the vapour trail. I'll make sure we stay on course. Leo's eyes started to close on their own. All right, maybe just... He didn't finish the sentence before slumping forward against the dragon's warm neck. In his dream, he heard a voice full of static, like a bad AM radio. Hello? Is this thing working? Leo's vision came into focus, sort of. Everything was hazy and grey, with bands of interference running across his sight. He'd never dreamed with a bad connection before. He seemed to be in a workshop. Out of the corners of his eyes he saw bench saws, metal lathes and tool cages. A forge glowed cheerfully against one wall. It wasn't the camp forge, too big, not Bunker 9, much warmer and more comfortable, obviously not abandoned. Then Leo realised something was blocking the middle of his view, something large and fuzzy, and so close Leo had to cross his eyes to see it properly. It was a large, ugly face. Holy mother, he yelped. The face backed away and came into focus. Staring down at him was a bearded man in grimy blue coveralls. His face was lumpy and covered with welts, as if he'd been bitten by a million bees or dragged across gravel. Possibly both. The man said. Holy father, boy, I should think you'd know the difference. Leo blinked. Hephaestus? Being in the presence of his father for the first time, Leo probably should have been speechless or awestruck or something. But after what he'd been through the last couple of days, with Cyclops and a sorceress and a face in the potty sludge, all Leo felt was a surge of complete annoyance. Now you show up, he demanded. After 15 years, great parenting, fur face. Where'd you get all sticking your ugly nose into my dreams? The god raised an eyebrow. A little spark caught fire in his beard, and then he threw back his head and laughed so loudly the tools rattled on the workbenches. Ha 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 ha! You sound just like your mother, Hephaestus said. I miss Esperanza. She's been dead 7 years. Leo's voice trembled. Not that you'd care. But I do care, boy, about both of you. Which is why I never saw you before today. The god made a rumbling sound in his throat, but he looked more uncomfortable than angry. He pulled a miniature motor from his pocket and began fiddling absently with the pistons, just the way Leo did when he was nervous. I'm not good with children, the god confessed, or people. Well, any organic life forms, really. I thought about speaking to you at your mum's funeral. Then again, when you were in 5th grade, that science project you made, steam-powered chicken chucker, very impressive. You saw that? Hephaestus pointed to the nearest work table, where a shiny bronze mirror showed a hazy image of Leo asleep on the dragon's back. Is that me? Leo asked. Like me right now, having this dream? Looking at me having a dream? Hephaestus scratched his beard. Now you've confused me, but yes, it's you. I'm always keeping an eye on you, Leo. But talking to you is, different. You're scared, Leo said. Grommets and gears, the god yelled. Of course not. Yeah, you're scared. But Leo's anger seeped away. He'd spent years thinking about what he'd say to his dad if they ever met. How Leo would chew him out for being a deadbeat. Now, looking at the bronze mirror, Leo thought about his dad, watching his progress over the years, even his stupid science experiments. Maybe Hephaestus was still a jerk, but Leo kind of understood where he was coming from. Leo knew about running away from people, not fitting in. He knew about hiding out in a workshop rather than trying to deal with organic life forms. So, Leo grumbled, you keep track of all your kids? You got like 12 back at camp? How'd you even... Never mind, I don't want to know. Hephaestus might have blushed, but his face was so beaten up and red it was hard to tell. Gods are different from mortals, boy. We can exist in many places at once, wherever people call on us, wherever our sphere of influence is strong. In fact, it's rare our entire essence is ever together in one place. Our true form, it's dangerous, powerful enough to destroy any mortal who looks upon us. So yes, lots of children. Add to that our different aspects, Greek and Roman. The god's finger froze on his engine project. That is to say, being a god is complicated. And yes, I try to keep an eye on all my children, but you especially. Leo was pretty sure Hephaestus had almost slipped and said something important, but he wasn't sure what. Why contact me now? Leo asked. I thought the gods had gone silent. We have, Hephaestus grumped. Zeus's orders, very strange even for him. He's blocked all visions, dreams and iris messages to and from Olympus. Hermes is sitting around bored out of his mind because he can't deliver the mail. Fortunately, I kept my old pirate broadcasting equipment. Hephaestus patted a machine on the table. It looked like a combination satellite dish, V6 engine and espresso maker. Each time Hephaestus jostled the machine, Leo's dream flickered and changed colour. Used this in the Cold War, the god said fondly. Radio 3 Hephaestus. Those were the days. I keep it around for pay-per-view, mostly, or making viral brain videos. Viral brain videos? But now it's come in handy again. If Zeus knew I was contacting you, he'd have my hide. Why is Zeus being such a jerk? He excels at that, boy. Hephaestus called him boy, as if Leo were an annoying machine part, an extra washer maybe, that had no clear purpose, but that Hephaestus didn't want to throw away for fear he might need it someday. Not exactly heartwarming. Then again, Leo wasn't sure he wanted to be called son. Leo wasn't about to start calling this big, awkward, ugly guy Dad. Hephaestus got tired of his engine and tossed it over his shoulder. Before it could hit the floor, it sprouted helicopter wings and flew itself into the recycling bin. It was the Second Titan War, I suppose, Hephaestus said. That's what got Zeus upset. We gods were, well, embarrassed. Don't think there's any other way to say it. But you won, Leo said. The god grunted. We won because of demigods. Again, he hesitated, as if he'd almost made a slip. Of Camp Half-Blood, well, took the lead. We won because our children fought our battles for us, smarter than we did. If we'd relied on Zeus's plan, we would have all gone down to Tartarus fighting the storm giant Typhon, and Kronos would have won. Bad enough mortals won our war for us. But then, that young upstart, Percy Jackson, the guy who's missing. Yes, him. He had the nerve to turn down our offer of immortality and tell us to pay better attention to our children. No offence. Oh, how could I take offence? Please, go on ignoring me. Mighty understanding of you. Hephaestus frowned and then sighed wearily. That was sarcasm, wasn't it? Machines don't have sarcasm usually, but as I was saying, the gods felt ashamed, shown up by mortals. At first, of course, we were grateful, but after a few months, those feelings turned bitter. We're gods, after all. We need to be admired, looked up to, held in awe and admiration. Even if you're wrong. Especially then. And to have Jackson refuse our gift of being a mortal were somehow better than being a god, well, that stuck in Zeus's craw. He decided it was high time we got back into traditional values. Gods were to be respected. Our children were to be seen and not visited. Olympus was closed. At least that was part of his reasoning. And, of course, we started hearing of bad things stirring under the earth. The giants, you mean? Monsters reforming instantly. The dead rising again. Little stuff like that. Aye, boy. Hephaestus turned a knob on his pirate broadcasting machine. Leo's dream sharpened to full colour. But the god's face was such a riot of red welts and yellow and black bruises, Leo wished it would go back to black and white. Zeus thinks he can reverse the tide, the god said. Lull the earth back to sleep as long as we stay quiet. None of us really believes that, and I don't mind saying we're in no shape to fight another war. We barely survived the Titans. If we're repeating the old pattern, what comes next is even worse. The giants, Leo said. Hera and said demigods, and gods had to join forces to defeat them. Is that true? Hate to agree with my mother about anything, but yes, those giants are tough to kill, boy. They're a different breed. Breed? You make them sound like racehorses. Ha ha, the gods said, more like war dogs. Back in the beginning, you see, everything in creation came from the same parents, Gaia and Uranus, earth and sky. They had their different batches of children, your titans, your elder cyclopses and so forth. Then Kronos, the head titan. Well, you've probably heard about how he chopped up his father, Uranus, with a scythe and took over the world. Then we gods came along, children of the titans, and defeated them. But that wasn't the end of it. The earth bore a new batch of children, except they were sired by Tartarus, the spirit of the eternal abyss, the darkest, most evil place in the underworld. Those children, the giants, were bred for one purpose, revenge on us for the fall of the titans. They rose up to destroy Olympus, and they came awfully close. Hephaestus's beard began to smoulder. He absently swatted out the flames. What my blasted mother Hera is doing now, she's a meddling fool playing a dangerous game, but she's right about one thing. You demigods have to unite. That's the only way to open Zeus's eyes, convince the Olympians they must accept your help, and that's the only way to defeat what's coming. You're a big part of that, Leo. The god's gaze seemed far away. Leo wondered if he really could split himself into different parts. Where else was he right now? Maybe his Greek side was fixing a car or going on a date, while his Roman side was watching a ball game and ordering pizza. Leo tried to imagine what it would feel like to have multiple personalities. He hoped it wasn't hereditary. Why me? He asked. As soon as he said it, more questions flooded out. Why claim me now? Why not when I was 13, like you're supposed to? Or you could have claimed me at 7 before my mum died. Why didn't you find me earlier? Why didn't you warn me about this? Leo's hand burst into flames. Hephaestus regarded him sadly. Hardest part, boy. Letting my children walk their own paths, interfering doesn't work. The fates make sure of that. As for the claiming, you were a special case, boy. The timing had to be right. I can't explain it much more than that, but... Leo's dream went fuzzy. Just for a moment it turned into a rerun of Wheel of Fortune, and then Hephaestus came back into focus. Blast, he said. Can't talk much longer. Zeus is sensing an illegal dream. He is lord of the air, after all, including the airwaves. Just listen, boy. You have a role to play. Your friend Jason is right. Fire is a gift, not a curse. I don't give that blessing to just anyone. They'll never defeat the giants without you, much less the mistress they serve. She's worse than any god or titan. Who? Leo demanded. Hephaestus frowned, his image becoming fuzzier. I told you. Yes, I'm pretty sure I told you. Just be warned. Along the way, you're going to lose some friends and some valuable tools. But that isn't your fault, Leo. Nothing lasts forever, not even the best machines. And everything can be reused. What do you mean? I don't like the sound of that. No, you shouldn't. Hephaestus's image was barely visible now, just a blob in the static. Just watch out for... Leo's dream switched to Wheel of Fortune just as the wheel hit bankrupt, and the audience said, "Oh." Then Leo snapped awake to Jason and Piper screaming. Chapter 30. Leo. They spiralled through the dark in a freefall, still on the dragon's back, but Festus's hide was cold. His ruby eyes were dim. Not again, Leo yelled. You can't fall again. He could barely hold on. The wind stung his eyes, but he managed to pull open the panel on the dragon's neck. He toggled the switches. He tugged the wires. The dragon's wings flapped once, but Leo caught a whiff of burning bronze. The drive system was overloaded. Festus didn't have the strength to keep flying, and Leo couldn't get to the main control panel on the dragon's head, not in mid-air. He saw the lights of a city below them, just flashes in the dark as they plummeted in circles. They had only seconds before they crashed. Jason, he screamed, take Piper and fly out of here. What? You need to lighten the load. I might be able to reboot Festus, but he's carrying too much weight. What about you? Piper cried. If you can't reboot him, I'll be fine, Leo yelled. Just follow me to the ground. Go! Jason grabbed Piper around the waist. They both unbuckled their harnesses, and in a flash they were gone, shooting into the air. Now, Leo said, just you and me, Festus, and 2 heavy cages. You can do it, boy. Leo talked to the dragon while he worked, falling at terminal velocity. He could see the city lights below him, getting closer and closer. He summoned fire in his hands so he could see what he was doing, but the wind kept extinguishing it. He pulled a wire that he thought connected the dragon's nerve centre to its head, hoping for a little wake-up jolt. Festus groaned, metal creaking inside his neck. His eyes flickered weakly to life, and he spread his wings. Their fall turned into a steep glide. Good, Leo said. Come on, big boy, come on. They were still flying way too hot, and the ground was too close. Leo needed a place to land, fast. There was a big river. No Not good for fire-breathing dragon. He'd never get Festus out from the bottom if he sank, especially in freezing temperatures. Then, on the riverbanks, Leo spotted a white mansion with a huge snowy lawn inside a tall brick perimeter fence, like some rich person's private compound, all of it blazing with light. A perfect landing field. He did his best to steer the dragon towards it, and Festus seemed to come back to life. They could make this. Then everything went wrong. As they approached the lawn, spotlights along the fence fixed on them, blinding Leo. He heard bursts like tracer fire, the sound of metal being cut to shreds, and boom! Leo blacked out. When Leo came to his senses, Jason and Piper were leaning over him. He was lying in the snow, covered in mud and grease. He spat a clump of frozen grass out of his mouth. Where? Lie still. Piper had tears in her eyes. You rolled pretty hard when Festus... Where is he? Leo sat up, but his head felt like it was floating. They'd landed inside the compound. Something had happened on the way in. Gunfire. Seriously, Leo, Jason said. You could be hurt. You shouldn't. Leo pushed himself to his feet. Then he saw the wreckage. Festus must have dropped the big canary cages as he came over the fence, because they rolled in different directions and landed on their sides, perfectly undamaged. Festus hadn't been so lucky. The dragon had disintegrated. His limbs were scattered across the lawn. His tail hung on the fence. The main section of his body had ploughed a trench 20 feet wide and 50 feet long across the mansion's yard before breaking apart. What remained of his hide was a charred, smoking pile of scraps. Only his neck and head were somewhat intact, resting across a row of frozen rose bushes like a pillow. No, Leo sobbed. He ran to the dragon's head and stroked the snout. The dragon's eyes flickered weakly. Oil leaked out of his ear. You can't go, Leo pleaded. You're the best thing I ever fixed. The dragon's head whirred its gears, as if it were purring. Jason and Piper stood next to him, but Leo kept his eyes fixed on the dragon. He remembered what Hephaestus had said. That isn't your fault, Leo. Nothing lasts forever, not even the best machines. His dad had been trying to warn him. It's not fair, he said. The dragon clicked. Long creak. 2 short clicks. Creak, creak. Almost like a pattern, triggering an old memory in Leo's mind. Leo realised Festus was trying to say something. He was using Morse code, just like Leo's mum had taught him years ago. Leo listened more intently, translating the clicks into letters, a simple message repeating over and over again. Yeah, Leo said. I understand. I will. I promise. The dragon's eyes went dark, and Festus was gone. Leo cried. He wasn't even embarrassed. His friends stood on either side, patting his shoulders, saying comforting words, but the buzzing in Leo's ears drowned out their words. Finally, Jason said, I'm so sorry, man. What did you promise Festus? Leo sniffled. He opened the dragon's head panel, just to be sure, but the control disc was cracked and burnt beyond repair. Something my dad told me, Leo said. Everything can be reused. Your dad talked to you? Jason asked. When was this? Leo didn't answer. He worked at the dragon's neck hinges until the head was detached. It weighed about 100 pounds, but Leo managed to hold it in his arms. He looked up at the starry sky and said, Take him back to the bunker, Dad. Please, until I can reuse him. I've never asked you for anything. The wind picked up and the dragon's head floated out of Leo's arms like it weighed nothing. It flew into the sky and disappeared. Piper looked at him in amazement. He answered you. I had a dream, Leo managed. Tell you later. He knew he owed his friends a better explanation, but Leo could barely speak. He felt like a broken machine himself, like someone had removed one little part of him, and now he'd never be complete. He might move, he might talk, he might keep going and do his job, but he'd always be off balance, never calibrated exactly right. Still, he couldn't afford to break down completely, otherwise Festus had died for nothing. He had to finish this quest, for his friends, for his mum, for his dragon. He looked around. The large white mansion glowed in the centre of the grounds. Tall brick walls with lights and security cameras surrounded the perimeter, but now Leo could see, or rather sense, just how well those walls were defended. Where are we? He asked. I mean, what city? Omaha, Nebraska, Piper said. I saw a billboard as we flew in, but I don't know what this mansion is. We came in right behind you, but as you were landing, Leo, I swear it looked like... I don't know. Lasers, Leo said. He picked up a piece of dragon wreckage and threw it towards the top of the fence. Immediately, a turret popped up from the brick wall, and a beam of pure heat incinerated the bronze plating to ashes. Jason whistled. Some defence system. How even alive? Festus, Leo said miserably. He took the fire. The lasers sliced him to bits as he came in, so they didn't focus on you. I led him into a death trap. You couldn't have known, Piper said. He saved our lives again. But what now? Jason said. The main gates are locked, and I'm guessing I can't fly us out of here without getting shot down. Leo looked up the walkway at the big white mansion. Since we can't go out, we'll have to go in.